I was walking down the shoulder of the freeway in a night so black it felt physical, like a coat someone had thrown over my head. Cars ripped past inches from my elbow, their headlights punching holes in the dark and then vanishing again. Every time one roared by, the wind slapped my face and tugged at my clothes, as if the whole highway wanted me gone. I kept thinking the same useless question. Why am I the one out here? 2 hours earlier, I'd been laughing in a living room that smelled like pizza, weed, and cheap cologne. Now I was a lone shadow on a ribbon of asphalt, with nothing in my pockets and a knot in my stomach that felt heavier than a brick. I met Beth at the factory on a Tuesday morning that started like every other. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the air thick with oil and metal dust. We both worked the grinding machines that smoothed the massive print rollers. The job was loud enough that you learned to talk with your eyebrows and half smiles. Beth was only 2 years older than me, but she had the confidence of someone who had already lived 3 different lives. She wore her long, dark hair in a thick braid down her back and chewed cinnamon gum like she was mad at it. The first thing she ever said to me was, "Don't let that machine bully you. It can smell fear." We became friends the way people do when they share the same dull hours and the same aching feet. Lunch breaks turned into stories about bad boyfriends and even worse apartments. She told me she was married, living out in Rancho Cucamonga with her husband, Mark. She talked about him like he was both her favorite person and her biggest headache. One Friday, she leaned over the machine and shouted, "You should come out this weekend. We're having people over. Food, drinks. You can get away for a weekend." I didn't have any better plans. Alan and I weren't getting along so well lately. So I said yes. Their house was in a newer neighborhood that looked like every other one in Southern California. Stucco walls, the color of old teeth. Palm trees trying too hard to look tropical in the middle of a desert. Inside, though, Beth's place was warm and loud. Music thumped through the walls. Someone was cooking something greasy that smelled amazing. Mark was taller than I expected, with a grin that took up his whole face. He introduced me to a handful of friends whose names I forgot before the handshake was over. Tina, Rob, a guy everyone just called Moose. Drinks appeared in my hand without me asking. Someone rolled a joint on the coffee table like it was a sacred ritual. For a while, the night felt loose and easy, the way weekends are supposed to feel when you're young and convinced that nothing truly bad can happen to you. Then Moose slapped his keys on the table and said, "Let's go get dirty." That's how the off-roading idea was born. We piled into 2 trucks and headed toward the foothills where the city thins out and turns into dust and scrub brush. The moon was thin as a nail clipping, just enough light to make the rocks look like sleeping animals. I'd only been off-roading once before, and that was in VW Bugs that had been modified and souped up. These trucks were huge, with gigantic tires and engines that roared. They clawed up slopes that looked impossible, engines whining, tires spitting gravel. We went straight up cliffs that seemed like we would flip over backwards and straight down drops that made me squeeze my eyes shut and my stomach feel sick. Everyone was whooping and laughing, passing joints back and forth. I tried to match their energy, but something in the dark desert made me uneasy. Out there, the world felt bigger than it should, like we'd driven off the edge of a map. At one overlook, we stopped and climbed out. The city glittered in the distance, a bowl of stars spilled on the ground. That's when the mood shifted. Beth and Mark started arguing over something small. Who'd lost the lighter? Who'd promised to bring more beer? The words got sharper, louder, until they weren't about beer anymore. They were about old grudges, about who never listened, about who ruined whose life. Tina tried to step between them, but Beth shoved her hands away. "I'm done with this," Beth snapped. "All of you." And then she started walking down the dirt trail toward the faint glow of the freeway miles away. At first we thought she'd cool off and come back. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The desert swallowed sound. You could shout her name and it felt like throwing pebbles into a well. Mark, he paced in tight circles, muttering. Tina stared into the distance, like she could will Beth back if she just tried hard enough. "We have to find her," she said. So we drove the trails again, headlights sweeping back and forth. Nothing, just mountainous rocks, empty washes, and skeleton bushes. Finally, Moose said the idea that changed everything. "Someone should walk the freeway side. If she's heading for the exit, that's the only way we'll find her." Then, for some reason, everyone looked at me. I laughed at first, thinking it was a joke. "You want me to walk the freeway? Alone?" Tina touched my arm. "You're the only one sober enough. And you're good with people." Good with people? I was good at running a machine and pretending I understood football conversations. Mark said, "We'll be right behind you in the truck. It's just a straight shot." It didn't feel like a suggestion anymore. It felt like the decision that had already been made without me. They talked over each other, piling reasons on like bricks. "You're smaller. You're faster. She'll talk to you. We can't all leave the trucks." The desert wind carried their voices around me until I couldn't tell who was who. And against every instinct, I agreed. They dropped me near the edge of the freeway. Then the truck's taillights shrank back into the desert and left me with the freeway's ugly heartbeat. Walking that shoulder was like balancing on the edge of a blade. The ground vibrated with every passing car. Headlights turned me into a deer, froze me in place. I kept imagining a mirror clipping my shoulder, my body folding like paper. I shouted Beth's name until my throat burned. No answer. I wondered if she had run to the other side, or if some rando had picked her up. Anger started to warm me better than the thin jacket I'd worn. Why did I say yes? I barely knew these people. Beth was a coworker, not a sister. Tina was practically a stranger. A semi blasted by, and the gust nearly knocked me to the gravel. I pictured my mother getting a phone call. "Your daughter was found on the freeway." I walked faster. The next exit sign appeared in the distance like a promise. My legs felt rubbery walking down the ramp, but the moment I stepped off the freeway, the world changed. Streetlights, a gas station, the ordinary hum of civilization. I ducked into a fast food place that smelled like fryer oil and bleach. The girl behind the counter looked bored until she saw my face. "Are you okay?" "I need to make a call," I said, hearing how shaky I sounded. "Emergency." She slid the phone across without asking questions. The only number I knew by heart was Carol's. Carol answered on the second ring. Even half asleep, she recognized my panic. "Where are you?" she asked after hearing my brief explanation. "I'm at the Burger King, just off Milliken Avenue exit in Rancho Cucamonga." "Carol, I know I'm a pain in the ass, but can you come and get me?" She didn't hesitate. "Stay inside. I'm on my way." While I waited, I replayed the night, trying to figure out where it went wrong. Maybe the moment Beth and Mark started arguing? Maybe the second I let them vote me onto that shoulder like a sacrifice. An hour later, Carol's old sedan rolled into the parking lot like a rescue boat. The relief hit so hard I almost cried. "You look like hell," she said, hugging me through the open window. "Drive," I whispered as I got in. "Please, just drive." But I couldn't leave without my purse. My keys, my ID, everything was back at Beth's house. Carol offered to go to the door alone. "No," I said. "I want to see their faces. I want to hear the excuses for this bullshit." The house looked exactly the same as when we'd left. Music still leaking through the walls. Through the windows, I saw shapes moving and heard laughter. Laughter. My hands started shaking again, but this time it wasn't fear. I walked to the front door and slammed it open so hard the framed photos on the wall rattled. They were all there. Tina on the couch, Mark pouring drinks, Moose telling some story with big gestures. Beth sat in the middle like a queen returned from exile. For a second, no one spoke. Then Beth, bright as sunshine, said, "There you are. We were wondering where you went." For me, the room went a curious shade of red. "Where I went?" My voice sounded foreign, too loud. "You put me on the freeway like a stray dog." Mark laughed. Actually laughed. "Hey, you volunteered." "I did not volunteer. You bullied me." Beth shrugged. "I reached my limit. I just needed to cool off. No big deal." Reached her limit. No big deal. The words echoed the roar of the cars in my ears. I grabbed my purse from the chair and felt something inside me snap clean in half. Everything I'd swallowed all night came pouring out. The fear, the humiliation, the image of my body on that shoulder. I told them exactly what I thought of their friendship, their party, their idea of fun. "You left me out there," I said. "I had to walk 2 miles to the nearest off-ramp, 2 miles in the dark." The room went quiet except for the music, suddenly too cheerful. "Do you have any idea what kind of people stop for a girl alone on the freeway at midnight? I had to hide in the bushes because a truck slowed down and started circling back. I was terrified." Beth tried to interrupt, tears springing to her eyes, but I didn't stop. "You don't get to reach my limit me into a life-threatening situation," I said as I turned to go. I looked back briefly. What a bunch of bitches. Carol stood in the doorway like a guard. "Let's go," she said gently. Outside, the night air felt clean for the first time. I walked to Carol's car without looking back. As we pulled away, the freeway roared in the distance, a long, dark river. I realized something that would take years to fully understand. Sometimes the scariest place isn't the desert or the highway. It's a room full of people who decide you're expendable. Carol reached over and squeezed my arm. "You're safe now." I watched the exit sign disappear in the mirror and promised myself I'd never let anyone vote me onto a shoulder again. The city swallowed us, light by light, until the night felt like something I could survive. If this story brought up difficult feelings, please know you don't have to carry them alone. If you're feeling unsafe, overwhelmed, or just need someone to listen, help is available 24/7. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline in the United States. You can call or text 988. The crisis text line, you text the word HOME, HOME, to 741-741. Or you can also call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. You matter. Your story matters. Reaching out is a sign of strength. not weakness.